Joins us on the mother of all talk shows. Tell us first, Scott, if you will, what happened on the airplane and why?
Well, I never really got on the airplane. I was doing that last passport check, with the flight attendant before you cross the threshold onto the airplane. And she checked it over, said, "You're welcome to board." And then three armed, uniformed, full body armor members of the Customs and Border Protection Service showed up, asked if I was William Scott Ritter. I said, yes, I was. They asked if I would remove myself from the line, given the fact that they are uniformed law enforcement officers. I complied. They asked to see my passport. I am obligated to turn it over to them. They confirmed that it was my passport. And then they said they are seizing my passport and I will not be flying today. When I asked under whose authority, they said the Department of State. I said, do you have anything in writing? They said, nope. I said, are you going to give me a receipt? Nope. They just took it. I said, well, what do I do? They said, well, call the Department of State and they'll tell you what happens next. And so, at that point in time, I could have, gotten into a physical altercation with three armed officers and probably gotten killed or thrown into jail for the rest of my life. B, got into a useless conversation about my constitutional rights with three heavily armed officers of the Customs Border Patrol, or C, gracefully exit stage right and live to fight another day. So I opted to collect my bags, and I didn't hold these guys any bad feelings. We had a talk. One of them was a former Marine. We talked about the Marine Corps. We wished each other well. I shook their hands. Yeah, they're just doing their job. They're not, the evil. They just are complying with the orders they were given. The orders they were given were unconstitutional. You can't seize my passport without just cause, a violation of the Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizures. And it's a violation of my Fifth Amendment because they can't. One of the liberties I have as an American citizen is the freedom to travel without restraint from my government, unless they have a legal reason to do so, which has to be explained to me through due process. Nothing was explained to me. They just prevented me from traveling. That's a discussion I'll be having with the State Department and other officials as I work assiduously to get my passport returned to me. But right now, I am a man without a passport.
This is a big story, though, Scott. This is a big story. I mean, we're smiling about it because you definitely took the right decision to exit stage right gracefully. We all need you alive and kicking, even if it's only on screen. But this is a massive story that a figure of world renown such as you has had their passport taken and forbidden to travel without any documentation, without any court order, just on the presumably verbal fiat of an American government official. That must be a lawsuit of considerable proportions, no?
I've been told it is, having taken on the U.S. government and other institutions in the court of law as a private citizen, it sounds like it's a lot easier than it is. It's an arduous task, it's an expensive task, and it's a joyless task because the U.S. government has imminent recourse. They just finished a case involving a passport where, even though the law was on the individual's side, the judge said, well, common sense dictates. Well, the law doesn't talk about common sense. It talks about specific measures. But even though all the measures were broken by the U.S. government, the judge sided on the side of the U.S. government, which they are wont to do. So, if the opportunity it's more important for me to get my passport back and to resume traveling. What made this seizure even more egregious is that I was departing to attend the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, where I was an invited panelist on two panels on center stage on geopolitical affairs, where I had scheduled numerous interviews and discussions with Russian media, Russian officials, and from my perspective, even more importantly, I was prepared to undertake a 40-day journey of Russia together with a documentary film crew in which we would document the reality of Russia and try and capture the experience of Americans interacting with Russians so we could come back and better inform American audience, sort of the antidote to the poison of Russophobia. This is journalism writ large. So they violated my First Amendment rights as well. Freedom of speech, infringing on my ability to speak freely, and my role as the press. Again, so this is done by a State Department. I want to remind people that helped the Ukrainian government create a Center for Countering Disinformation, which has labeled me and other American citizens information terrorists. They allow the Mirotvorets hit list run by the Ukrainian intelligence service to exist without any intervention by the U.S. government. The State Department, and this is no exaggeration, George, has tried to kill me. It seeks to silence me through violence and intimidation. That's what they do with the Ukrainian government as their proxies. The State Department funds it, organizes it, and approves everything they do. I've been listed as the #1 so-called Russian propagandist on the Mirotvorets hit list and on the Center for Countering Disinformation. Having failed to either kill me, intimidate me, or silence me, they now have revoked my passport to prevent me from talking. And I just want to, it'll be a nonverbal thing, but maybe your British audience will understand when I show the two fingers to the people who are responsible for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's uncanny coming from the political tradition that I do, but you don't. It is uncanny, the comparison with what happened to Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was an international superstar, a film actor, an opera singer, an internationally renowned football player. He was an actor on the Shakespearean stage of the highest rank. His records sold like Michael Jackson's sold across the world in their millions. He was loved in Russia, and he wanted to stop the Cold War becoming a hot war. And he had his passport revoked to stop him traveling to Russia. And in those days, he had to sing down a telephone line to huge British audiences. Thanks to new technology, we can still see you and talk to you anytime you're gracious enough to give us the time to do so. But it is an uncanny comparison, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, I will never put myself on the level of Mr. Robeson and people of that caliber. I'm just a simple Marine doing a simple job. But the consequences of what I'm trying to do, I too am trying to stop a nuclear war by promoting not just disarmament. I have a background as a weapons inspector. I might be one of the few people alive today who has actually participated in the destruction of Soviet nuclear weapons and facilitating the elimination of American nuclear weapons back when we gave a damn about arms control, excuse my language. And today we're on the cusp. As I said recently on another show, we're one ATACMS strike away from a thermonuclear war that will kill us all. And those strikes are taking place as we speak. One American-made ATACMS missile fired by a Ukrainian against a Russian target that destroys the wrong thing or kills the wrong person could lead to a general nuclear conflict that kills everybody. And that strike could take place as we're speaking, George. We may not finish this interview. I think we will. I hope we will. But the reality is, in the world we live in today, we may not. And there's silence, deafening silence here in the United States by a population that's been lulled into complacency through the poison of Russophobia, where they are trained by the media, by the government, to treat everything about the Russians at face value being negative, negative, negative. They are the enemy. They are not the enemy. And the reason why I do travel to Russia as frequently as I do, and I do the tasks that I do, isn't to support the Russians. I like the Russians. I think they're great people. I'd like to be friends with them. But I'm not doing this for Russia. I'm doing this for America. I'm doing this for my country. I'm a patriot who wants to have my children grow up so they can have their children, and we can pass this humanity down the lines. That's all at risk right now. So I dare go to Russia. I dare engage with the Russians. I dare learn about them, and I dare capture that experience and bring it home to better inform people. We were gaining traction, George. We were gaining traction. We were becoming, I think, too big. In the past, I think the U.S. government thought that they could ignore me or continue to slander me, smear me, NAFO style, and make me go away. They failed. And we were on the cusp of doing something very great, very big, and they shut it down. They couldn't kill me. They couldn't intimidate me into silence. They did what they could do. They seized my passport.
Now, you mentioned the danger. I mentioned it in my monologue also, that the green light that has now been given to Zelensky to fire these long-range missiles into Russia at Russian cities has provoked all the Russian leadership to rather calmly and with no echo in the West at all say that this will be an act of war which will transform this conflict from a proxy war to an actual war, and that Russia will retaliate and maybe act preemptively. And who could blame them? If you're a country giving a weapon capable of killing me in my house and giving the person you gave the weapon to the permission to use it and to kill me in my house, well, I'd be a fool not to act preemptively to try and stop you doing so. I firmly believe that we are seconds from midnight on the doomsday clock, and yet our entire media has completely and utterly and deliberately withheld that danger from the public. Is it the same in the US?
Absolutely. You know, we have this conversation about the justification of the West in its support of Ukraine. But we ignore something that the Russians have been raising even before this proxy war began. If you remember, back in December of 2021, the Russians submitted a draft treaty to the United States and NATO seeking to resolve this diplomatically. And all they said is Ukraine can't be a member of NATO. And one of the reasons why is that the Russian nuclear deterrent command and control, early warning, and indeed some of their missile capabilities were designed when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. So that Ukraine served as a land barrier, a buffer between these sensitive locations and NATO. Now, if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO and NATO moves long-range missiles onto Ukrainian soil, this critical infrastructure is exposed to preemptive first strike. And this is exactly what has happened. The United States promised, Joe Biden promised Vladimir Putin that there would never be American missiles on Ukrainian soil. There would never be Ukrainian missiles on Ukrainian soil, or American missiles. He lied through his teeth. Now we have ATACMS missiles targeted by Americans. Ukraine cannot target these missiles. They lack the technical capacity to collect the data and program the missiles. We pick the targets. We target the missiles. All the Ukrainians do is push the button. America is at war with Russia right now, and the American people don't understand it, don't understand the reality or the consequences. Russia will retaliate. Let's just pray that Russia continues to have the maturity to avoid this escalating into a general nuclear war. But if it does, hopefully the last thought through people's minds will be, besides, oh, damn, well, it's our fault, because it is our fault. This is a war that we in the West have thrust upon ourselves. As Vladimir Putin once said, when there's a nuclear war, everybody will die, but the Russians will go to heaven as martyrs. The West will go to hell as those who started this conflict.
Well, we've made it this far into the interview. Let's hope we can conclude it finally with my asking you about the Northern Front, Israel's Northern Front, Lebanon's Southern Front. They have been escalating for some weeks now. There's been 8 months of attrition, but the escalation is obvious, setting each other's countrysides on fire. bombing raids, sniping, artillery fire, quite a significant number of casualties now on both sides, whereas the Israelis are not used to taking that level of casualties. Even today, there was a big loss for Israeli forces on a military base in the north, they thought out of range of Hezbollah missiles. Netanyahu and his cabinet appear to have decided to launch a war against Lebanon. What could possibly go wrong?
Everything. Israel's not prepared for a war with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been preparing for a war with Israel. Israel just mobilized 50,000 reservists who are going to be carrying the brunt of the load for this conflict. If Gaza has shown us anything, Israeli reservists are poorly trained, poorly led. They are cowardly, and they, are only good at inflicting harm on unarmed civilians, blowing up empty buildings. But when it comes time to stand toe-to-toe with a hardened enemy, these reservists do not fare well. Hezbollah is orders of magnitude more professional and more deadly than the brave Hamas fighters that have been fighting Israel in Gaza. Hezbollah is prepared for this war, and Hezbollah made it clear that this conflict with Israel will not be about defending southern Lebanon to prevent Israel from pushing Hezbollah back to the Litani River, but Israel losing northern Israel, losing the Galilee. Hezbollah will take the fight to Israel. The Israelis have no clue what's about to hit them, or the military does know what's about to hit them. Their soldiers are scared to death. Their officers are nervous. Remember, as you said, 8 months they've been getting the snot smacked out of them by Hezbollah. These are nervous Nellies there on the front line. The reservists coming in aren't going to be meeting combat-hardened troops who have the confidence to say, don't worry, boys, everything will be all right, follow me. They're going to be meeting people who are scared to death, shivering in their hovels, shivering in their bunkers, and these reservists are going to crack at the first opportunity. This will be a disaster for Israel. Now, Israel will respond the way they always do, which is to bomb civilian targets. And it is the civilians of South Lebanon, of Beirut, of the Bekaa Valley, who will pay the bulk of this price for Israel's criminal ambitions. But mark my words, Israel will lose this war, and not the way they lost it in 2006, simply being brought to a standstill. The consequences to Israel of this will be the destruction of critical infrastructure, the destruction of entire villages and towns, even suburbs of cities, and the deaths of thousands of their soldiers and perhaps thousands of their civilians. This is a catastrophe that doesn't have to happen, but Benjamin Netanyahu cannot stay in power without Israel being at war. And he will now take Israel into what will probably be the final fatal phase of Israel's history.
Scott Ritter, as always, a great pleasure to hear you, even when the news is bad. It's better we get it from someone like you, a straight and honest talker who knows what he's talking about. Good luck with your passport, and I hope that we can have you in the British Parliament after the 4th of July. Independence Day in your country, Independence Day here in the UK. Thanks very much for joining us, Scott Ritter.